thekidswearcrowns.com.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into episode 2 of our Don't Call This a Podcast Election 2020 mini-series. I am Ryan McLaughlin. Along with me is Ron Harris. Or do you want to go by Ron? Do you want to go by Ronnie? Do you want to, I don't know. It feels weird when your last name is already short. So when I shorten your first name and give like the
Yeah.
it's your call. But
I was born Ronnie, of course, but like I don't know, people just decided to call me Ron, and now it sticks. It is what it is. So I'm Ron. Yeah.
All right, Ryan and Ron. So if you missed it last week, if you didn't get a chance to tune in, we're doing a mini series from now until the November election, where we cover various topics within the political realm, talk about things that have been going on, and give our own perspective about it, just to kind of add a little different voice and a different flavor to the mix, so to speak. So we're trying to keep it short, simple. Last week we kind of went on for a little bit, but I think it was good in order to let people hear our voice and kind of get an establishment of what we're doing here. But today we're going to try and keep it to under 40 minutes for you. But let's go ahead and jump right into it. Lockdowns and stay-at-home orders are starting to ease across the country, primarily in the Southeast. Our governor here in Georgia has no idea what he's doing because he allowed teenagers to get licenses without taking a driving test, and now he's walking it back. I don't know about you where you are in Alabama, Ron, but Gwinnett County out here in Georgia has been insane. Traffic is back. I'm not comfortable, but what's going on out there in Alabama for you?
Well, for one, in Alabama, our state legislator is basically putting out there, and I'm not exaggerating when I say they're putting it out there. They're staging a coup for the current governor. No big deal. If you are unfamiliar, Kay Ivey put them on blast with the allocation of funds for the CARE Act. They were going to spend an absolutely just outrageous amount of money to renovate the state house. Yes, you heard that correctly. And then Kay Ivey put them on blast, and now you have people within Alabama state legislators saying like, okay, that's how you want to play it. You don't have a friend anymore. So yeah, they're just staging a coup. Also, while reopening the entire state to, the last things that need to be open, like barbershops, salons, gyms, no big deal.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where we are here. Restaurants are opening up or have opened up. I think we were one of the first states that actually issued an order to go back. So, it's chaos, man. And when you go out, you still see some people with masks on, and that's good. I mean, if you're going to have to be out during this thing, people still need to go get groceries if they can't, get them delivered for whatever reason, or don't feel like paying that tip and extra charge, because Instacart will turn a $200 grocery order into $270 real quick. But so I get it. But man, if you have to go out and about, please stay safe. Please don't do anything that's not necessary. You don't need a haircut right now. You don't need.
You do not.
You don't need to sit down at Red Lobster. Like, it'll be okay. And just, we're all going to be forced to go back to work here very soon, because just to kind of double back, man, these stay at home and shelter in place orders were not made to get rid of the virus. They were made to buy the government time to act. And because we have an incompetent buffoon in the White House, nobody did anything. And we're all kind of in the same position that we were 2 months ago when this whole thing started ramping up. So, for those of you that have complaints about we did all this and nothing has changed, blame the president. Speaking of which, yesterday he had Monday, he had a very, very just odd press conference again out on the White House lawn, filled with big old white banners that I hope get memed, saying, America is tested more than every nation or something crazy. We're going to get to how that press conference ended, but I wanted to get to a video that was that made the rounds this morning from none other than Mitt Romney himself, who expounded upon the idea that the only reason he made the point that it is correct that we have now surpassed South Korea in terms of number of tests conducted, but he made the point to say that South Korea conducted that number of tests within a couple of weeks, like 2 to 3 weeks, compared to us conducting that same amount of tests in about 2 months. So in about 4 or 5 times the amount of time we have done the same number of tests that they have. That's nothing to brag about. We should not be proud of that. We should be ashamed of that.
We should not.
if anything, if we're opening back up, it should have been with access to testing. So, Ron, I want to hear your thoughts on this. Aside from the memeable banners, and Mitt Romney being the voice of reason here, how badly have we dropped the ball on this?
Well, yeah, as everyone remembers, we went from, oh, it's just one person with coronavirus, we'll get over it, to like, oh, it's just 50, no big deal, to, oh, this is a Democrat plot. It's all um it's all something they're trying to tack on to my legacy, to now like, oh, Obama dropped the ball. We didn't have the infrastructure in place for testing. So basically, the goalposts are like shifting the stadium right now. Like you said, we have tested a large amount of people, but think about this within this context, we still haven't tested enough people. So testing isn't widely available as it should be. And plus, the time in which we implemented the testing, and the amount of time that we've had our first case, between our first case and where we actually rolled out testing, there was such a huge time gap there that, yeah, the response is still poor. And like you said, that's not something you want to be proud of. That's not, if you want to be number one in anything, don't be number one in that.
Yeah, I mean, I think aside from the fact that you're making a life and death situation into some kind of insane, sick competition, but as a matter of fact, all of this could have been avoided, and we say this over and over again, if the president would have just listened to the information and intel he got in December and January. It's been out several times now that we had offers from the World Health Organization to receive testing kits, and we didn't act on it. We could have acted on it. We could have isolated the same way that South Korea did. And you can say that they've done a lot of extreme things in terms of contact tracing, but they did what they had to do, and they've only dealt with 20 something deaths or something of that nature, something extremely low. I mean, you're talking about, we would have been looking at this the same way we all looked at Ebola, or we looked at the swine flu or bird flu, in that, yes, it did impact some of us and people were killed by this virus. However, we were able to contain it quickly because we had a competent administration to act on it. There was a piece a couple of weeks ago that actually showed, and I'm not trying to romanticize George W. Bush by any means, but it talked about how he got his hands on, a few pieces of literature about, pandemics and epidemics, and he read those and studied those and tried to implement plans to basically handle that situation should it arise. Joe Biden released an ad earlier this week that detailed the infrastructure that the Barack Obama administration put in place to ensure that there was testing available, or to ensure that we had, funding for public health organizations, being prepared to send people to where the epicenters of these things get started. And instead, Trump defunded it. He cut it at every turn because of whose name was behind it. So, they're going to deflect in any way they can. And that kind of leads into the next topic here, where on Sunday, if you're like me and you have essentially blocked this dude's account because it's just not good for my mental health to see his tweets.
No.
Anytime, basically, Donald Trump went on a series of tweets trying to create a conspiracy theory by calling it Obamagate. He did this by basically saying or retweeting a bunch of QAnon accounts, conspiracy accounts, and basically offered no detail about what Obamagate is, just tried to really set something up. Ron, what's going on here? Does Trump know something we don't, or is he just pulling something out of his ass again?
See, from what I've learned, if this administration has taught me anything, is that when you create your fake conspiracies, you want to cast the net wide. So anything could fall under that. What is Obamagate? You ask. Obamagate could be whatever they make it. It's out there now. It has a name, Obamagate. So now, and hopping ahead a bit, it could be like, oh, Obama knew about Michael Flynn, but he didn't say anything. Or it could be like, well, why did they send money to China to study pandemics in 2015? Like, Obamagate could be wherever you make it, but at the bottom of it all is really just deflection. That's all it is. And it's once again, it's his tried and true playbook. When the heat is on, he'll deflect to get the pressure off him, basically tossing scraps to his base because that's the type of things that they like. But yeah, ultimately it's just deflection.
Yeah, and what's going to end up happening here is between Fox News and OANN and the fringe parts of his of his base, they're going to create whatever Obamagate is. As you said, they're going to use whatever they can to start a conversation about a fake controversy. The today on the White House Instagram account, they tweeted out a picture that had a picture of Obama. It said Obamagate, the most corrupt administration in U.S. history, when I think statistically he's the least corrupt in terms of people being arrested or indicted for violations or anything of that nature. He had the least out of any administration since Franklin Roosevelt. So I mean, you're talking about the complete opposite. But these people don't live in reality. They create their own, and that's what's so scary about it. Is that if he just repeats it enough times, mainstream media outlets are going to pick up on it and try and have a conversation about it as if it's a both sides thing when it's just complete nonsense. That press conference ended with Trump walking off because he was questioned about, his claims. He was questioned about the amount of testing that's been done, and he fired back at an Asian reporter saying, I don't know, why don't you go talk to China? Before storming off the stage. I just don't know anymore, man. Like, I don't know.
I don't either. Like, just when you think we've reached our new low, he'll surprise you. He'll say, "Oh, please hold this case of beers. I got something for you." And like you said, this is not a both sides thing. This is not a he was being sarcastic thing. This was very specific when he asked her, go ask China. That's like him asking me, like, oh, well, telling me, why don't you go to Africa? Like, it's a very racist attack towards a certain person because of their ethnicity. So I I just don't know anymore, man. I've never seen anything like this.
You kind of end up running out of words because you feel like you've been gaslit so much about this whole situation that nothing you say, like, there's 1,000 examples to pull from, but I just don't have the words to pull one specifically, right? Like, you could talk about Russia. The Russia investigation feels like it was decades ago, and everything there pointed to him needing to be removed from office, but he was protected by a bunch of cowards. I mean, Mitch McConnell has pretty much done everything he could to not hold Trump accountable so they could get more federal judge seats. And to add to, I'm stuck on words, man. Like, to add to all of this now, and I didn't put this in our notes, but I'm going to throw this on you here, Ron. House Democrat leaders have pushed another round of stimulus payments. This is as recent as I think last night. They have pushed for another round of $1,200 stimulus payments with the same criteria as before, but to include youth above the age of 16 within this group. You're also looking at expanded state funding, as well as a few other provisions that weren't able to make it in last time.
Ron, I think like the Social Security restriction was removed. So basically, those tax-paying basically are non-citizens who are still taxpayers who have a job here, who are legally working here. By the way, I like to add that they would now be eligible for the stimulus. So to answer your question, nothing, because I feel like I know this is what you're going to ask. Basically,
well, before you get into that, I've got the full bullet points. So let me read this off, and then you give your response. All right. So you're talking about extending the $600 per week unemployment benefits in CARES 2 through January, nearly $1 trillion in aid to state and local governments, hazard pay for essential workers, expanding coronavirus testing, contract tracing, and treatment, enhancing tax credits for employers to keep their workers on the payrolls, providing full COBRA subsidies for those who lost their employer-funded health coverage, additional money for the U.S. Postal Service, support to help renters and homeowners make monthly rent, mortgage, and utility payments, and last but not least, it will not have any provision for company liability or waivers of company liability like McConnell was trying to push through.
So what's been discussed before I guess our Democratic leaders even announced this plan, what they would like to attack. And by the way, this is going to be like, you're going to have to agree some palms to get this done, or it's not probably not going to get done at all. We're going to revisit basically sanctuary cities. So if your state accepts this money, Then Mitch McConnell wants you to give up sanctuary cities, as well as he wants those waivers, like you won't be able to hold, corporations or your employer liable. But I do think if there is a second round, and there desperately needs to be a second round, just like I spoke about what's happening in Alabama, there needs to be provisions added telling states, and I know this is a big issue, exactly what should be done with that money. What can't you use it for, and what you can use it for. Don't leave it up to the states, because next thing you know, $200 million will be going to the state house. But yes, this and it's a and I just look at what's happening in Canada, and how smoothly it's flowing there. Like, this shouldn't even be a debate. Like, there shouldn't have been one payment and then, like, oh, we'll talk about one later. Like, no, as long as this thing is happening, like, people need this stimulus, like the people, and then they could, like, filter that money back into the economy. So yeah, I hope it happens, but I'm really afraid of the prices at which it's going to come if it is passed. So that's my thing.
Yeah, I'm with you there, because McConnell's trying hard to, number one, have states go bankrupt. Primary reason for that is because bankruptcy is handled through state bankruptcy is handled through federal court. If it's handled through federal court with federal judges, where Trump has appointed a large amount of Republican judges, then they can essentially dictate how states handle their budgets, especially blue states, which are primarily responsible for lifting a lot of the or doing a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of tax-based things of that nature. Right now, unemployment is at 14.7%. That is an extraordinarily high percentage rate that's only going to keep increasing, because it doesn't matter what we do to try and reopen the economy. If people are not confident in their ability to be safe, they will not spend money. There were reports today talking about how people are hoarding their money and saving it, especially middle class and lower class, because we don't know when it's going to cut out. So it's going to get even uglier than it is now. I think it's all going to depend on, as the economy continues to tank, how badly Mnuchin and Trump want to play ball and get something done. I do think there is a scenario where Mnuchin and Trump, desperate to turn the economy around, say, I don't care what it takes. We need another round of checks so I can put my name on them. If there's one thing that Democrats have in their corner, it's Trump's desperation to get back the one thing that he could have won re-election on, which was, and by numbers, a strong economy, even though it only works for a certain type of group. So that's what he had going for him. And as long as he's desperate for that, I think we can get another one in. But I'm with you in terms of what McConnell is going to do to it, because he is a term I won't use, since we're trying to keep this a family-friendly podcast. All right. So let's move on to the Joe Biden side of things. Last week, we covered him pretty extensively. This week, a lot of news has popped up in the last few days. There's a piece that we're going to get to here in a second. That, you know what, really, let's get to it now, because it involves what we're talking about.
Let's get to it now.
There was a piece that was done by, I think it was NY Mag. Was it New York Magazine?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And it was about Joe Biden planning a FDR level presidency. And in the piece, he talks about basically, how business as usual isn't going to work, and that we're going to need a massive overhaul of a lot of our federal programs in order to actually benefit the working and middle class, including provisions involving healthcare, provisions involving unemployment, provisions involving what's the other word I'm looking for here? Income, things of that nature, climate change, climate action. It's a really well done piece that I will be sure to include in the post for this and tweet from our account. But Ron, having read that, how do you feel about Biden's kind of, I don't want to say gradual shift from a centrist candidate before this whole process started to really on the left side of the party?
So yeah, we could, and by the way, that's a great piece, and if you haven't read it, you should read it. I do think, as far as like stimulus and support, Biden's a Biden administration would like mirror like what we got with the New Deal, but what Biden is doing right now reminds me of something a similar president did, and that's Lyndon B. Johnson. Just to go on a quick history lesson, if you don't know, Lyndon B. Johnson was a Democrat before Democrat means what it meant now. He did not go over to the Dixiecrats. He remained a Democrat. But the one thing I can give Lyndon B. Johnson is all the things he accomplished under his administration that he probably didn't believe in himself. We have Medicare, Medicaid. We have the Voters' Rights Act. We have let's see, we have the
higher
Civil Rights
education.
Act, higher education, right? So now taking that back to Joe, Joe has included Joe is discussing protections for LGBTQ people. He is adapting Liz Warren's plan about okay, how do we support like African Americans and get them to college. So he's like piecemealing these plans from everyone who was in that Democratic race and putting them together. And much to everyone's surprise, it's the more liberal plans that he's been taking. So and we mentioned this last week. If he builds this strong team around him and takes these plans, then I think it'll be a very strong administration. And I'm really glad he's speaking now and saying, the status quo won't work. We need to push beyond that because we're going to be in dark ages by the time the next president's inaugurated. So just simply doing the least isn't going to be enough. Like, we really are going to have to roll out the money. So that's a very promising thing to hear him say that.
Yeah, and I mean, to add to that, when we talk about these plans that he's adapting, look at whose names aren't being mentioned in there. We're not seeing plans from Klobuchar. We're not seeing plans from Buttigieg. We're not seeing plans from the center of the party. We are seeing Warren. We're seeing Bernie. We're seeing Inslee. We're seeing names that have been associated with the more progressive wing in terms of the presidential candidate field. This is not, we've got a lot of polling that's showing that people state to state are preferring Biden, especially in swing states. And I will say that a lot of this piece, I mean, it's a storyteller, right? Like, this is a storytelling piece. So when you read it, keep that in mind because it is a nice lengthy read. You're going to be reading it for a little while. But it does a great job at breaking down these ideas that he has in handy. You were mentioning with Lyndon B. Johnson, how, some of these great society plans that he enacted were against his own personal beliefs, but he realized that it would have worked for the greater good. And I think that's where we are sitting with Biden, who, again, has mentioned that he wants to be a bridge to the future of the party. And that he specifically mentioned in being that bridge, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, Gretchen Whitmer, even Pete Buttigieg, but all these people that are sort of on the younger end of the party in terms of being in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. So that's important. It's important we're getting that from him. And I think when you see these things, I think it's easy when we're on the progressive side of the party to want to push it away and be cynical. I think it's easy in general for people to be cynical about this thing because we saw what happened in 2016, right? We saw how easily something was stolen. But I think this time around, I think you have more people who are understandably affected by this administration, who actually see the dangers of this administration, where the same propaganda isn't working, right? There's a lot of polling. If you don't follow Matt Rogers on Twitter, I would highly suggest that you do so. Matt Rogers does a great job of highlighting a lot of polls that are currently being circulated by legitimate vendors. And I know a lot of people are wary of polls, but if you go back and look at things from 2016, these same polls were good for Trump. And so these polls now are heavy in favor of Biden. I mean, to the point where we're talking about a 9-point win in Michigan or, a 5-point win in Pennsylvania. These are things that matter. And I think this piece can kind of inspire you to believe that we're going to get a bit of a progressive presidency out of Biden because he's going to rise to what this challenge is. And he's as much as stated it.
Yeah, because I guess to piggyback up the point you just made, like, he now knows that not only does he have to fight the current regime, but he kind of has to, use both arms and keep his party together. So the moment he starts to like lean more moderate, like, he's going to be put into check by his own people. So I think he knows this now that, okay, like, I do have to do what's for the greater good. I can't just sit firmly in the middle anymore. And I'll tell you what, like, Biden was, like we mentioned this before, Biden was like one of my bottom candidates. But the fact that he is just listening and saying, like, okay, I see these plans, I like them, let's roll with them, like, that's promising.
Yeah, Yeah, that's more promising to me than anything else that we could have seen. Because again, we've said time and time that we understand people's frustrations with how everything ended up. And we talked this extensively last episode of why or how Biden won the nomination. But I think it should not be overlooked that he is actually trying to adjust. I mean, this is a
Yeah,
77-year-old man.
yeah,
He could have
yeah.
easily said, I'm going to play the moderate route. I'm going to be the moderate. I'm going to ride the center wing of the party. I'm going to try and bring in Republicans, which I think he's naturally doing that by name ID, but not policy wise. He's not
Right.
enacting those things. And this is not the time to worry about spending and deficits because people need help. And we can worry
Hmm.
about the back end of that later, but people need help. And the sooner we can get that done, the sooner we can get out of it. Because let's not be mistaken. If Biden wins the election, that transition is going to be ugly.
Oh
There's going
yeah.
to
Oh
be
yeah.
there's going to be documents that go missing. There's going to be a tweet storm. There's going to be all kind of things that I can't even put into words. But it's not going to be pretty. So he's going to inherit. He's going to come into office inheriting a complete mess from an economic standpoint and just the office itself. So just be mindful of that. We've got to put all the support we can behind him so that we can ensure that this turnaround comes quickly, because I can guarantee you right now, the effects of this, even if a vaccine were to come out in February, you've got to think about the needing somebody who can administer the process, who can ensure that it's being distributed the way that it should be. Because I guarantee you, if this buffoon is still in office and a
Hmm.
vaccine hits in February, most of us ain't seen it till July. So
Right.
I would be aware of those things and just keep that stuff in mind. So I didn't
Sorry,
know.
I'm just,
No, you
I'm
good.
just, I'm just sorry. I just paused because I'm still stuck on what you said. It's going to get ugly if Trump loses because he's basically gonna have to get pulled out of the White House kicking and screaming. There's and and then you have to wonder like, okay, like would those in the legislator like legislative basically would they embrace these conspiracies like, oh, it was tampered with, or oh, Hunter
Mm-hmm.
Biden, whatever that means.
Mm-hmm.
Like so when you said that, like that's why I paused because all of that just flashed into my mind. I was like, yeah, he's not going to go away gracefully. So
No.
that needs to be thought about as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Even while he and even just his lingering and looming presence, because it wouldn't surprise me if he tries to run again in 2024 if he loses. So I mean, anyway, let's talk about Biden's potential presidency some more. Two interesting tidbits of news have come out in the last day and a half that are really adding some spice, if you will, to the VP candidacy. Kamala Harris, who was written off as a VP pick, later early this year, especially after the whole, that little girl was me moment in the primaries.
Mhm.
She is now seen to be one of the best fits in terms of Biden's potential VP. So things are kind of going circular. Basically, Biden's campaign has started vetting a group of prospects that includes about a dozen women. Um, and so they are basically assessing everybody from Kamala Harris to Elizabeth Warren, but basically through through words of advisors, through people like Jim Clyburn, it's starting to get around that Kamala might be the pick. So, Ron, we have a little bit of news that we're going to share here that may put a bullet in all of this, but how do you feel about Kamala's emergence? You and I talked about who we want to see.
Mhm.
How do you feel if it does end up being Kamala as the VP nominee?
Like I said, on paper it sounds good, but I think Biden would have to. All right, so to I guess to tie history together, you have Biden who would have to shake basically the effects of the crime bill, and then you have Kamala who would have to shake the nickname Coppola, which I absolutely hate. Like I said, that's That's an entire episode by itself. But anyway, so those two together on paper, great. But that's why I say I think Kamala is, yeah, I think Kamala is better served on the cabinet. Yeah, I mean, like I said, on paper, I love it because I mean, I really have no major issues with Kamala, but in actuality, I can see people not fully embracing that.
Yeah, I mean, so the short list, according to this Politico piece, includes Amy Klobuchar, God no, Catherine
No,
Cortez,
absolutely no.
Catherine Cortez Masto, senator from Nevada. The one that has been tossed around that really is interesting to me is Florida Representative Val Demings, um, another black woman, Michigan
Yeah.
Governor Gretchen Whitmer. What were you gonna say about Val?
No, I was about to say Val. No, sign me up for that. Yeah, sign me up for that one.
You want
But I
you want real black auntie energy. Val
yeah,
Demings, black auntie energy.
sign me up for that. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Um, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, Big Gretch. I feel like that's mandatory every time we talk about her now.
Yes.
Former National Security Advisor Susan Rice, and of course Stacey Abrams. So of course inside Biden's camp, Warren supporters are pitching her as somebody who can unite the liberal wing and younger voter wing, along with Biden's kind of established group. Bakari Sellers is pushed for Kamala Harris hard. So there's a lot that's going on here. But again, this is a Politico piece, and I will make sure I put this in the posting so you can reach out to this, or you can check this out on your own if you haven't seen it already. But what is actually starting to throw a dent in this plan here is that it was announced yesterday that Joe Biden and Stacey Abrams will be holding a joint town hall tomorrow, Thursday. Well, if you're listening to this today, Thursday, May 14th, on MSNBC. It kicks off at, let me make sure I have the time right here. It looks like it kicks off at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So Ron, this, as I mentioned, oh no, I'm sorry, 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Ron, this throws a little bit of a monkey wrench because you and I last week were convinced that Stacey may not be the eventual pick just because of her lack of statewide experience. But what do you think this says now with Stacey being in a joint town hall? I don't think anybody has done a joint town hall with Joe Biden that has been in contention for this VP pick.
So to take it back, it was leaked maybe I want to say like a year ago that basically Biden and Abrams had a handshake agreement that if he were to win the Democratic nomination, he would be her VP. I mean, she would be his VP, excuse me. I think there were some ebbs and flows with that. Once things started to roll out about Biden, Stacey would slowly back away. As he gained momentum, she would, say, okay, I'm back in. So like I said, there were ebbs and flows. Obviously the ball is in her court. If there was to be a top choice, it would be Stacey Abrams. Let's just put that out there. Like I said, the way what Stacey did in Georgia and what she's done afterwards, just because she's now focused her energy in fighting basically interference with the voting process, getting people registered to vote. So if there is a top choice, it would be Stacey Abrams. And the fact that they're holding this town hall, just go, it's like the worst kept secret. Like, just go ahead and announce it.
Yeah, you might as well say it at this event, honestly.
Right. So yeah, I think yeah, I think maybe, and this just flashed into my mind, maybe the meetings that people are leaking that happened between Joe and Kamala are about something different. Like, hey, you're gonna be in a transition team, you're gonna be on the cabinet, yada yada yada. Maybe
Supreme Court.
Maybe they right. Maybe they haven't moved away from Stacey Abrams. Maybe they never moved away from her. So I could totally see her being the person. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think both of us feel the same way that we would be happy for Stacey if she got the nomination. I'm of the belief that I would love for Stacey to be back home here in Georgia, so that when 2022 comes around again, because again, we mentioned this last week, but it's going to be really easy to look at Brian Kemp and say, see, you made a mistake. You should have picked me.
Right.
And I feel like having somebody like her as opposed to somebody like John Ossoff, who's probably going to try and run, would just be a more of a shoe-in terms of getting out the black vote, unless Keisha throws her name in the hat. Anyway, so, I think I would love to see Stacey in the role. I see where there are a couple of holes or flaws in her candidacy or in her nomination. The fact that, there's going to be ways for them to attack Stacey, but there's going to be ways for them to attack anybody. So I would be happy with her. I would be happier with her than all of two people. We mentioned both of them last week in Tammy Duckworth and Elizabeth Warren. So if I had a hierarchy or a ranking, she would be number 3, and I would be okay with that.
Yep. And I think with her, you have like, I know you said there are some things you can attack, but I think the fact that we don't know much about her helps. Like she doesn't have like she's been in politics for quite some time, and like she's been doing this for quite some time, but we still don't know enough about her to attack her like we would a Kamala or like Warren. Like there's really nothing to pick apart. And she's so eloquent. Like once you hear her speak, like I don't think there's any real, there's no real negatives to her. Like she's pretty much like a fresh new face. So I think now that I think about it, she would be the best fit. Not one I would want, but like you said, she's definitely my top 3. So if we had to pick someone, like, why not Stacey?
Yeah, when you're talking pure policy, when you're talking pure, people have been hunting for that Obama orator. Stacey's it. In terms of being able to speak and connect with people, there is a reason why Stacey came as close as she did to turning Georgia into a blue state in terms of winning the governor's mansion. She was extremely close, and if it wasn't for basically cheating on Brian Kempson of being Secretary of State and wouldn't recuse himself, and all of a sudden we're shutting down polling places, and all of a sudden ballots are missing and all that fun stuff. If it wasn't for that, she would be in the office right now. So I think that she could be a formidable force. They're hoping to get somebody for Biden who is a good orator, who can speak to the people in a time of need. I don't know enough about Tammy Duckworth from a speech standpoint, from an oration standpoint, to know if she fits that bill. I do know she fits the bill of exactly what we're trying to get in terms of those white folks that look at the military and be like, hey,
right.
But in terms of policy, Abrams and Warren are on the same plane for me. So I'm with it. I'm with it 100%.
Yeah. I will say this, the field is good. Like I don't think, unless it's just Klobuchar, I don't think there's a wrong choice. So I do feel good about that.
Yeah, I think there's only 2 bad choices you can make here. One is to get Klobuchar. The other one is to pull a Tim Kaine. There's technically a third bad choice. There's technically a third bad choice if you go get Hillary. That would be the worst choice.
Oh,
but
no.
But I don't think he's tone deaf enough to do that. So
no.
I think it's going to be one of those 3. I really do. I think it's going to be Harris or Warren or Abrams. I don't know if Duckworth is really going to get the consideration that she needs. So, hey, I'm okay with either of those.
I'm cool with it. Yeah.
Ron, I think that does it for today, man. It's going to be 5:00 here, so I'm gonna have to go pick the kids up shortly. But is there anything you want to leave the people with before we logged out here?
Just to echo what I said last time, like I said, I think these conversations need to be had. So, like I said, if you agree, disagree, just let us know. We're just trying to start a dialogue here. We need to talk through these issues. So, just let us know.
I'm not gonna do it again this week. No cross market jokes. All right, so make sure you follow us on Twitter at the KWC blog. You can follow myself at Eagle Eye 1906. You can also follow us on Facebook, the KWC blog, facebook.com/the KWC blog. Make sure you subscribe to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, depending on which one you prefer. We really would love to hear your feedback, so subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. For Ronnie Harris, I'm Ryan McLaughlin signing off. Thank y'all. We will catch y'all next week.
TheKidsWearCrowns.com